Today, we're going to talk about a thinker from 400 years ago who might just be the most important educator you've never heard of. His name was Comenius, and honestly, his ideas feel more relevant now than ever. His story is this incredible lesson in how hope can blossom from absolute chaos.
So let's start with a really big question, one we all kind of struggle with. What is school actually for? Is it just about getting a good job, learning a trade, or is it something deeper? Something about becoming a better, more complete human being. Modern education is constantly being pulled between these two ideas, the practical job training versus this more holistic, human-centered development. To get some real clarity on this, we need to go on a little journey. We're heading back in time, 4 centuries back, to an era of just unbelievable upheaval. And we're going to meet a man who looked at all that chaos and didn't despair. Instead, he came up with this revolutionary plan to build a better world, starting right in the classroom.
All right, so who is this guy? His name was Jan Amos Comenius, and today he's often called the father of modern education. That's a huge title, but to really get why he earned it, you first have to understand the world of chaos that shaped him. Just look at what this man lived through. His entire life was defined by turmoil. He was born right before the 30 Years' War, which was one of the most brutal conflicts in European history. As a result, he lost his home. He became a refugee, forced into exile because of his faith. And then, as if that wasn't enough, in 1656, he suffers this final, crushing blow, a fire that just destroys everything.
Can you even imagine? He lost his entire library, including a massive dictionary he had spent decades working on. Gone. And this is the point where most of us, I think, would just give up. But for Comenius, this is where his story really begins. Because instead of surrendering to despair, he dedicated the rest of his life to rebuilding. Not just his own work, but the very foundations of society. And he was going to do it through education. And it was out of that personal tragedy that he developed this incredible philosophy. This wasn't just about, changing a few things in the curriculum. No, this was a completely radical plan to teach everything to everyone, to rethink what a school is even for. At the very heart of his vision was this idea he called pansophia. It's a bit of a fancy word, but it just means universal wisdom. He believed that all knowledge, science, art, morality, everything, it's all connected. And because it's all connected, it's possible, and not just possible, but necessary, to teach all things to all people. In his day, that idea was just unheard of. In his masterwork, The Great Didactics, he gives us this perfect mission statement. His goal was, and I quote, "to seek and to find a method by which the teachers teach less and the students learn more." You see that? The whole focus flips. It's not about the teacher just cramming facts into students' heads anymore. It's about creating an environment where students can truly learn and maybe even enjoy it.
And here's where his vision becomes really, truly profound. He wasn't designing a better system for the elites, for the wealthy boys who could afford it. No. He was arguing for universal education for everyone, for boys and for girls, for the rich and for the poor. It was this deeply democratic vision of knowledge for all of humanity.
Okay, so that's a pretty grand vision. But a vision is one thing. How did he actually plan to do it? Well, his method was super practical, it feels incredibly modern, and it's all based on one simple idea. Learning should follow the patterns of nature. I absolutely love this quote. It just perfectly captures his whole idea. Education is not about stuffing their heads, right? It's about helping their minds to effloresce, to bloom, to blossom, to flourish. He saw the classroom not as a factory assembly line, but as a garden.
So his method was all about observing nature. First, you follow the natural order of things. Simple ideas first, then you build towards more complex ones. Second, you engage the senses. You learn by seeing and touching and doing, not by memorizing a bunch of abstract rules. Third, and this is so important,
Every single thing you learn has to connect to its practical use in real life. And finally, the whole point was to make school a workshop of humanity, a place of joy and activity, absolutely free from fear and physical punishment. Let's just put this side by side for a second because it really shows how radical he was. The old way, the standard education of his time, was all about rote memorization, abstract rules, and using fear to motivate. And it was only for the elite. Comenius just flips every single one of those ideas on its head. He championed understanding over memorization, sensory experience over abstract theory, and a pleasant, engaging education for everyone. It's night and day.
So, amazing vision for the 17th century, for sure. But what does any of this actually have to do with us today? Well, as we're about to see, pretty much everything.
Does any of this sound familiar? Learning through play, using your senses, student-led projects, the idea of a public school for all? If these ideas sound surprisingly modern, it's because Comenius got there first. He literally planted the seeds for almost every major educational reform that came after him. He was so far ahead of his time, it took the rest of the world centuries to catch up.
You can see the fingerprints of Comenius all over modern education. I mean, think of Jean Piaget's stages of child development, or Maria Montessori's sensory-based classrooms, or John Dewey's whole concept of learning by doing. Even the very idea that we have public, state-funded universal schools, that's a direct descendant of his Pan-Sophic dream. And this is exactly why we're talking about him today. This quote from a modern scholar really nails it. At a time when so many of us feel like education is in crisis, it's too focused on tests, it feels disconnected from real life, looking back at Comenius isn't just some boring history lesson. It's an urgent reminder of what learning is supposed to be all about. So why does this guy, 400 years later, still feel so alive, so relevant? I think it's because he reminds us that education isn't just about preparing for a job, it's about preparing for a life. His work, which was born from this age of total chaos, asks us a question that's just as urgent now as it was then. Are our schools building better workers, or are they cultivating better humans? Thanks for joining this explainer.